In this next problem, we have been given a frequency table that we need to use to calculate our mean, median, and mode. So here we have been given a frequency table that shows the goals scored in the games played by the Chelsea Football Club from September 2018 to May 2019. And with this top row is telling us the total number of goals scored, and we can see it's for values 0 through 8. And then the second row tells us the number of games, aka the frequency for those specific goals scored amounts. So essentially what this means is it's a nice shorter way to be able to condense a large data set where we have multiples of the same value. Essentially what is happening is when we see that it says 0 for number of goals scored and then it has a 7 for the frequency, if I were to start writing this out as a data set, we would have 0 written 7 times in the data set. And then when it has the 1 for the goals scored and then the 14 is the frequency, we have 1s written 14 times. There's 14 copies of those 1s and so on in our data set. And then we have the 22s, 11 of the 3s, and so on. So let's get to work to find our mean, median, and mode for this. I'm going to start with working on the mean. And with this, let's think about how we calculate our mean. We calculate our mean by adding all of the data values together. Well, in our data set here, the data values are the goals scored. These numbers, the 1 through 8, these are what are appearing in the data set. And then the frequency is just the number of times that value is in the data set. So that means when I have 7 zeros, I need to add all those together. 0 plus 0 plus 0, 7 times. Well, if I add 0 to itself 7 times, that's the same thing as 0 times 7. And then if we have 1 appearing in the data set 14 times, and I need to add all those together, well, that's the same thing as 1 times 14. And I just need to do that for all of these values here. So 2 times 20, 3 times 11, 4 times 3, 5 times 2, 6 times 1, 7 times 2, and 8 times 2. When I add all those together, that is essentially doing the process of adding all of our data values in our data set together, just a little bit quicker. And then we need to divide this by the number of data values in our set. And that here is our frequency, because the frequency is telling us how many times those values appear. So I need to add all those together, because we have 7 zeros, there was 14 1s, 22s, and so on. And now we can simplify this. If we put the numerator here into the calculator, you should get 145 for that. And then that denominator, if we add all those together, that adds up to 62. So 145 divided by 62. If I want to then round this to 1 decimal place, that should then give you about 2.3. So that's our mean. Let's now move on to the median. The median, we want to be able to find the number in the middle of our data set when it's ranked. Here, luckily in a frequency table, usually it's already sort of ranked already, and you don't need to reorder anything. But we do need to be able to find the number in the middle. One way to do this is to really just think about all of these values or these numbers of goals scored being listed out in multiples, and kind of imaginarily crossing them off. So if we remember, we have 0 7s on the left side. But on our right side of the data, I've got the 2 8s. So there's an 8 and there's another 8. I've got 2 7s on that right side of the data. We have a 6, we have 2 5s, and so on. So if I try to imagine I'm crossing off those 7 zeros on the left side of my data, the lower end, well, I need to then cross off 7 values on the upper end of my data, which means we need to get rid of the 2 8s, the 2 7s, the 1 6, and the 2 5s. Those all need to be crossed off as well, so that I cross off the same amount on both sides. And then if we imagine I cross off the 3 4s that we have there, well then I need to cross off 3 of the 1s, which means I no longer have 14. We now have 11 1s left there. And then if we cross off those 11 1s, well, that means I cross off the 11 3s, and I'm left with my 22s. So that means I'm within the region of all the 2s, so my median has to be a 2. We have an even number of data sets, so technically there's 2 numbers in the middle, but those 2 numbers are going to be both 2. So when I add 2 and 2 together, that gives me 4. Divide that back by 2, and you're always just going to be left with 2 for that. Okay. Now lastly, we have the mode, and this one is actually the easiest to be able to find from a frequency table, because if you think about the definition of mode, it's the value that occurs the most frequently. And well, frequency table just gives that to us. So we can find the one that occurs the most. So there's 22s that they scored for their goal. So 2 is occurring the most frequently in this data set.